Hello, everyone. My name is Vince Aguirre. I am the chair of the Putnam County Democratic Party, and I have the pleasure of being here with this amazing group of Hoosiers who are all running to become the chair of the Indiana Democratic Party. I am really excited to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then we'll move on to our first question. So, Destiny, if you would, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for hosting this discussion. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the future of the Indiana Democratic Party and what it will take to win again in this state. I'm Destiny Wells, and I'm running for Indiana Democratic Party chair because I believe that we must fundamentally change how we operate, organize, and communicate if we want to break the Republican supermajority and elect more Democrats at every level. The path forward isn't guesswork, and we know what needs to be done. That's why my platform is built on three clear pillars. That is recruit, reform, and rebrand. We want to recruit the next generation of Democratic leaders at every level, from county commissioners to our school board to our mayors. A GOP that dominates Indiana because they run everywhere. We must be doing the same. I want us to reform our infrastructure by modernizing our technology, voter outreach, and fundraising efforts. We can't continue running a 21st century campaign with outdated, underfunded tools. And I want to rebrand the Indiana Democratic Party so that voters see themselves in our movement. For too long, we've allowed Republicans to define us, and that needs to stop now. We are the party of working families, small businesses, strong schools, and economic growth, and we must own that narrative. Thanks again for having me tonight. I think you may know me as a previous candidate, but before that, I just want you to know that I'm also the deputy chair of Coalitions Expansion on the State Central Committee. So regardless how this race turns out, thanks to my opponents for being here, and let's make sure that we all stay connected to get Democrats across the finish line.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We'll move on to Derek.
Thank you, Vince. Jumping right in. My name is Derek Camp. I am the current Allen County Democratic Party chair. I have spent the last 15 years on the front lines of the fight for our party as a staffer, as a caucus leader, as a candidate, and most recently the last 4 years as a county chair. And with that, I see we do need to return to a focus on the fundamentals of what we do as a party. For us to start winning again at higher levels, we have to first start winning at our local levels. That means local offices at cities, counties, towns, township levels, and rebuilding our county parties so that they can support those candidates as well as the ones higher up in order for us to be successful. It also means bringing in proven fundraisers to assist the state party and making sure that we are having the funds necessary to support these programs that ultimately support our candidates and elected officials as we go forward. So I'm really looking forward to these questions tonight, and thank you for hosting this for us, Vince.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Luckily, we didn't have to go through this weather and be in person today, so I'm glad we could be virtual. Jennifer, over to you.
Hi, Putnam County. I am Jennifer McCormick. I also want to give a shout out to my fellow candidates. I appreciate everybody doing what you're doing, and I agree with so many of us where we were always talking about it's going to take all of us, and I truly believe that. So Karen and Derek and Destiny, thank you for doing what you're doing, because again, I think competition is good, and I think it makes us all better. So thank you for that. Putnam County, I want to thank you. I was your gubernatorial candidate, and although we didn't get the big W, we got a lot of little wins. And I also learned, having been statewide, once elected and once not elected, I've learned a lot about the entire state of Indiana. So I am excited to continue to travel the state, but just like all the other fellow candidates that you're going to hear, it's time that we need a major redo. And I don't think any of us would disagree with that. So I think the consensus is, we're excited to see what happens with the DNC, but then we got to do our part. For me, it's about being bold, being a party that is known about being bold and being engaged. It is about someone who can get the job done and not just have a strategic plan, which I will, but also focusing on, as Derek mentioned, the local level, that leadership development. We need our grassroots to be strong. We also need that communication to be tight. We need to get into policy advocacy, which I see a huge void. It's about unification, it's about inclusion, and it's about winning. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. My sole goal of doing this is to win.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that. And Karen, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself before we move on to the first question.
All right. Thanks, Vince. And thanks to you and Putnam County for hosting this. This is a great idea. And I'm happy to be part of this. I'm going to save my platform issues for later as we get into the questions. But I want to give everybody a little background about myself and who I am and why I think I'm qualified for this office. I am currently the first district chair. I was 4 years as vice chair, 4 years as chair. I've been on the SCC for 8 years. I am now the elected DNC member from the north part of the state. I was previously in the Indiana State Senate for 16 sessions. I am an attorney in Northwest Indiana. I've lived there, raised my kids there. So for 16 years in the Senate, I worked on everything. I worked on the budgets. I was on budget committee. I was ranking member of appropriations, ranking on environment, on utilities. I was on corrections and criminal procedure. That's where they make all the attorneys do our community service time. And I was also I think I was the voice of labor as the ranking but ranking minority member of the Pensions and Labor Committee. I went with labor through all of the wars uh, fought by 3 governors. It started with Mitch Daniels and the right to work. It was the war on teachers and collective bargaining. It was the war on AFSCME. So I am very familiar with all of the issues regarding working families, what they need. I was also caucus chair for 4 years, and as in that position, we raised millions of dollars to get our Senate Democrats elected. So my ties with the Democratic Party and with labor are long and strong. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I want to move on to our first guest who will be asking a question to our chairs. So Mr. Chairman, take it away.
Hi, I'm Ken Martin, Chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I want to thank all of you for stepping forward to help us build the future of our party in Indiana. Here's my question to all of you. As the DNC reorganization takes place this year, what can the DNC do to best support all Hoosiers and to demonstrate our commitment to improving their lives?
Karen, you'll go first in answering that.
Oh, great. I get the surprise question. Well, actually, it was really good for me to just see Ken Martin. I just came back from the Democrat National Committee meeting in Washington, D.C. We spent 4 days asking that exact question. That is not just an Indiana question, that is a national question. And all over the country, people are saying the same thing. We're asking the same thing. How can the DNC help state parties? And generally, the idea is that every state needs its own program. It's not a 50 state program. It's 50 individual programs for every state. And actually, I think we need to do the same thing in Indiana because we can't have one program for 92 counties. Every county has its own needs. What's good for Lake County or Marion County is not good for Putnam County or Switzerland County. So of all the things that we heard at the DNC, one of the consensus issues was we need to rebuild from the local level up. And the DNC right now is trying to figure out just how to do that. We need to reach people. We need to incentivize voting because everybody knows that our voter turnout is just awful. And we need to eliminate what I call structural impediments. And by that, I mean things like gerrymandered maps. So the DNC can help us in a number of ways, all along those areas. And of course, including money.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Jennifer.
So having just ran statewide and knowing what we're up against on the other side, I mean, they have Ziklag and they have ALEC, and they are very disciplined and very aligned from the national to the state to the local. And that is something that we are trying to, I think, as a party nationally and obviously as a state, and many of us at our national or at our local levels are trying to figure out. From the national, it's just not just them giving to states. It's Indiana having a presence and making sure we are loud, proud, bold, and engaged to say, here's what we can do for you. We have ideas. I mean, we have some uniqueness to us. Let us be part of this partnership. So it's not a one-way partnership. From them, we certainly need money. We already get some money from them. Is it enough? No. So we certainly need money, but we know that they have a huge lift in what they need to do as well. We need messaging, so it's a money messaging issue as far as just like we're seeing right now at the national level on the Republican side, we need to make sure that we know where the national's going so we can get that messaging going. So we are tight, we are aligned, and it sinks in. They're hearing it from all levels. And then finally, we need them for ready money, the messaging, and then the multiplier. We need field operations support. We need shared operations. I've talked about a resource hub. We need it desperately. Why should I have to pay for something? Destiny had to pay for something. Valerie, which I know there's laws on federal and state, but we were all pretty much paying for a lot of the same things. But also the national level on some of that had access. And so it just was such a disconnect, and I'm not blaming anyone. It was just the nature of what was going on. This is our opportunity to get it right and make sure that Indiana is a presence. Also, I would include in that, I did a good job with my team and with many of you on this call that we made those national connections. So it's not just the DNC, it's about the DGA. It's about making sure that we are staying connected to other state individual chairs. It's about making sure that we are being good partners across the board to the national and the state unions. And so it is incredibly important that we remain relevant, and not just relevant, but a strong relevancy to make sure that we are remaining bold and taking advantage of what we can, but also being a good partner.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that the DNC can provide us, but also there is something that we need to take to the DNC as well. So looking at what the DNC can provide to Indiana and to Hoosiers, under the last 4 years with Jamie Harrison at the helm of the DNC, they did increase their investment to Indiana, where we were getting 5 figures a month to help cover staff and programs. And I know Chairman Schmull is still working in his final month here to increase that even further to help all 4 of us, whichever one of us comes out successfully here in a month, to continue to support the party, making sure that we're having the resources to have staff at state party to support our county parties, support our district parties, support our electeds, and support our candidates. The other thing that the national party can really help with is providing training and best practices from around the country with what is working in some of these other places so that we are learning that and bringing that back here to Indiana, to our districts and our counties. Those are incredibly important for us. And that is where we can definitely benefit from them. The other thing, though, that we have to take to the national party is the messaging can kill us at the national level. It used to be that all politics was local. However, now we're getting caught up in these culture wars, in these national issues, which is drowning out our message as Hoosiers around the state, especially at the local level. And so working with the DNC, and I do think it's going to be very positive that we do have a Midwestern former state chair as the DNC chair now, in making sure that they at the national level understand the difficulties we in the Midwest face when talking with voters, being branded as these cultural elites.
Awesome. Thank you. And Destiny.
The convenience of going last is I just want to second everything that Derek said on messaging. And not getting caught up in that national message, but in fact, what is our Hoosier message? And I also want to second what he said. It's terrific. We have a DNC leader who's a Midwesterner. I think Karen hopefully remembers me walking up during one of our December State Central Committee meetings and being like, it needs to be Ken Martin. And so I was so happy. I think a lot of us probably were waiting with bated breath to see who the big boss was going to be come the first week of February. And I think that's great for us. In fact, later this month, I want to make sure that I have a call where everybody is able to attend. I'm going to bring in one of Ken's, his finance director when he was state party chair. And I also kind of want to throw this out there because a lot of people don't know that Ken was also the executive director of the donor table. And we have a donor table set up here in Indiana right now. And so just put a little pin in that. But I want to bring on Kate so that she can talk about how Ken operates. I also want to bring on Scott Klebb, who is the wife of the now chair of the ASDC. That is the Nebraska County Chair, Jane Klebb. This is a network of new leaders in the DNC, 35 to 55 somethings who have been they've been veterans before in the military. They have been state chairs in red states and really done the work in the trenches. So we are what? I have to wash my hands. Oh, yes, you have to wash your hands. So we are so lucky. Yes, I'm doing double duty. We're so lucky to have this generation on board. And I want to make sure that Indiana gets into that, whether it has been Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, that we are in that network as the DNC starts to change. And so what can they do for us? We need to leverage that national momentum that they are going to lead and that they are going to start. Again, I say it is those deep national relationships that I think that Indiana will get the support, resources, and attention it deserves. And they also need to be helping us, like I said, Derek, with that message, but also in our year-round organizing. I know that Ken, I want to throw this out there that people may not realize. We have a full-time paid chair here in Indiana. Not a lot of states have that. That is kind of a relic from when we were very successful. And so we're one of the few states that has a full-time paid chair. We do not want to do away with that, right? And Ken wants to make sure that we see that staffing across the state. So what that would actually do is that would help us free up funds to hire additional staff onto the Indiana Democratic Party, which would be great. So we want to make sure that we are in those conversations. We are at the forefront. We are in the network so that we can make sure that those dollars, those resources, and then also Indiana being just kind of this people don't also know that states are kind of a unicorn in how they raise money, right? We can raise money on different levels, federal, state, and it is so great that we have Ken because he's going to leverage that for us because he's been there. He's done that before 2018, 2019. He leveraged for states on data. We need to make sure that we are plugged in at this national level with this new cohort of leadership.
Thank you, Destiny. And I want to open it up just for general conversation. If there's any more, any of you would like to add before moving on to Kevin's question.
Yeah, Vince, I just want to say I am really impressed that you managed to get Ken Martin.
So Karen, I think it just shows that from the top down, the Democratic Party is really looking at every part of our country and investing in making sure the people who live there and the candidates and the party infrastructure there have what they need. And I'm really excited that he cares about small Putnam County, Indiana, when he's just getting acquainted to, everything going on in his new role. So I was really excited that he was willing to give us the time. And I think that shows that Democrats from the top down are going to give everyone the time. So for our next question, we'll go on to Veronica. Veronica, your question will be directed at Jennifer first, then Derek, Destiny, and Karen.
Thank you, Vince, and thanks to all the candidates who have joined us, and thank you for stepping up for running for this incredibly important role for the future of Indiana. Here in rural Indiana, we've seen over the course of a good long time, decades, our rural party infrastructure growing more and more stagnant. What is your strategy for instilling hope and re-energizing our rural Democrat infrastructure?
Yeah, thank you for the question. During our campaign, having been just fresh off the statewide, we did that. I mean, I think a lot of people across the state would tell you that in many of the areas, we went into areas that people have not been in some time. We motivated and we energized. We brought new people in. A big part of that is making sure that we have the shared resources so that the grassroots local can be extremely successful. We also need to make sure that we're being practical in our regionalism approach, because that is going to make or break us. So if we don't get regionalism right, we're all going to be in trouble. And that means leadership development. That means shared training. That means shared resourcing. It means clear expectations. I don't know. I can't tell you how many at the local level were like, can you kind of help me? Like, what is my exact role and who do I contact? And, here we are in the middle of a statewide, and there just seemed to be a real void in clarity on what were those responsibilities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to build off what we already have, and we've got a long way to go. I mean, let's be honest, but we also need to get back to bringing those along that are ready to go. We also have to be welcoming. So as I would go to events in some of those reddest of red areas, I would have people that said, I was a Republican, I switched parties, I want nothing to do with them, I'm trying to figure out how I fit in with the Democrats. And I said, we welcome everybody. We're a big tent, let's mean it. So there's a lot of opportunity, but it's going to be about leadership of inclusion, of unification, but also giving people the training and the support that they need to be successful.
So this is where a county party program comes into play. As Jennifer just mentioned, there were a number of people around the state that are ready to do the work. They were energized, but they may not know exactly what it is that they need to be doing now or next. And so by putting in place a county party program, which the state party has looked at before, we've just not implemented, is a way for us to do that. It's working through the district chairs and vice chairs with all the county parties, setting 4 and 8-year plans and setting goals on where do we want to be in a year, 4 years, 8 years, and how do we get there? It's making sure that we are providing them the training, the tools, and the resources in order to do that. And when it comes to resources, the state party is just not going to be in a position where we can give financial resources, but that doesn't mean we can't give them the tools to raise their own money, to support their own programs. And with that, that's another thing that we can do. We were talking about a resource library, a place where all county chairs have access to know this is how you do a call to caucus. This is what every aspect of running a county party is like, so that they aren't scrounging from the beginning every single time, and we have it all in one place. With that, I've also worked in rural counties. While I may be the chair of Allen County with the second largest city, I've worked in Kokomo, I've worked in DeKalb County. These are counties that if you put in programs and you have these goals, they show that they can turn out voters. They show that they can move voters and do better than previous races. That's what we did in Kokomo, and that's what we did in DeKalb. And so making sure that we're showing up, providing those trainings through this county party program to make sure that we are giving them the goals, the training, and the strategic plans so that they can help themselves and then help our legislative and statewide candidates. It's the party's job to turn out voters. It's the candidate's job to identify and persuade.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Destiny, we'll go over to you.
So again, sorry, Derek. Second Derek's philosophy on a rural program. I was going to do it. So let's take it a step further. So when I first came onto the party, it was deputy chair of coalitions and expansion, which kind of gave me free reign to go around 92 counties and get to know everybody and who they were. Let's do a little history lesson. So back in the 2010s, rural counties got together and they said they wanted to have a rural constituency caucus, and they were told no. And this will be a recurring theme where we have said constituency caucuses, you cannot be on the state central committee. And so what we want allowed it to do is, if we kind of look back at this year's elections, we saw a lot of great candidates get together for themselves because they didn't feel like they were getting those resources from the state, and they made their own rural, what was it, like rural summit or something? It was Trish, it was Michelle Higgs, it was Ross, it was all these great House candidates. And Michelle points out, she says, you know what, on a House race, I'm the only person who touches this turf. No other Democrat touches it. Republicans have a constant presence and Democrats don't. And so what we want to do is we want to, I want to get into like the really eaches of rural development, but what we need to be doing is we need to be looking at the state party and saying, how do we reform the structure so that rural Indiana, rural Democrats have a voice at the table? We do all this organization off of congressional district maps, and we get crappy maps from the Republicans every 10 years. And I'm sure that Karen and I can go into this later, because I think it's burned in my brain. Like one time where Karen showed up to SEC, I think, Karen, it was our new iteration of SEC, and you said, are we going to do maps? And we were like, what? No, we're depending on the C3s and 4s and nonprofits. But we continue to organize on those maps when we know they are not doing us well. Look at the 4th Congressional District. You guys got, like, 4th Congressional has Martinsville all the way up to Chicago. And Matt Maier's trying to make sense of this. But Matt Maier was there when they tried to bring on rural Indiana. So what we want to do is we want to lengthen the table at the State Central Committee. We want to give a seat to rural Indiana so that they are making sure that they are there and they are united, and that they can talk their actual problems in a State Central Committee that very often gets overwhelmed with urban voices, congressional races, and loses track of that rural messaging that we need to be talking about.
So again, I have to say everybody has really great ideas. All of 3 of you have talked about some really thoughtful things. I've thought a lot about this question since I saw it. I also will tell you that, again, this is a national issue. People are asking this all over the country. How do we re-engage with rural voters? I'm going to tell you right now that I don't actually know the answer to this. Everybody's got great ideas, but I think that for me, what I would like to do is to go out there to all of those counties, or as Jennifer said, all those regions, and ask them, what can we do for you? What do you need? We know that different counties need different things. Heck, we still have 1 or 2 counties in the state with no county chair at all. So I think that leading from the state party is good, but we also have to go out there and beat the bushes and ask them, what do you need from us? And let me just say, I was going to talk about this later. I think that one of the things that we can do is offer them programming. I have an idea for a 501c3 division of the state party that we could raise money for because it's tax deductible, and education kinds of activities would be able to be filtered through there. Other organizations like the League of Women Voters, Planned Parenthood, they've been doing this for 40 years. We've never done it. Other state parties are doing it. We can set up podcasts. We can set up issue forums. We can get out there and give people ideas that we can then let them filter out to their counties, to their people. So I don't have all those answers, but I know, I do promise I would find out.
I would like to add something on what Karen said.
Destiny, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to talk about this C3, C4 model as proposed by Karen. We actually have what we call in Indiana a donor table. And so the donor table, we're about the 34th, 35th state to have a donor table in Indiana. I think, Jennifer, I know you're acquainted with the donor table, and Rima, who is the executive director, you too, Derek, but also it has different, so let's say it's a stool, it has different legs. And one of those legs is the alignment table. And a former Democrat, Ariel Brandy, she runs that alignment table. And we already have about 18 organizations in the state of Indiana that are part of that alignment table. So the other states that are doing it, they're actually doing it under a national model. And like I said, while it's not novel that we're doing it, it's novel in its application to Indiana. So we'll have groups, let's say, and this kind of goes in line with what I was just answering on the last question. We want to bring on more constituency groups, right? Well, it's great that they have already gotten a head start, right? Because for example, I met with a Black pastor out of Indy a couple weeks ago. We sat there for 90 minutes. He said, I tried to bring on a interfaith council destiny to the state party under John Zodi. I was told no. Under Mike, I was told no. Well, guess what? Ariel's already done that work with the alignment table, where she has the Black Church Coalition. If you guys knew Zane, she used to be our executive director. Pastor Brooks is part of that. So we have these groups that are standing up in Indiana and already doing this work and already doing a collective message. That is why, again, we need to extend the state central committee, extend that table so that we're bringing on those constituency caucuses. Because like I said, birds of a feather like to get stuff done together. I'm seeing your look, Vince. So I know I'm done.
No, you're good. We have about a minute left if Karen or anyone else wants to add to that conversation.
I would. I've talked to a lot of people involved in a lot of those different groups, and there is two problems. One, probably not very many people even know what exists because there is such a disconnect between the party and between the local counties and between candidates. And although they were all supportive in their own way, the message that kept coming back to me was, if we don't have a chair that we can trust and that will be the adult in the room, our money is going to go elsewhere. I've even had enough people tell me, depending on what happens, that they are willing to do an outside and kind of go their own separate direction. And so I think this cannot be understated. I agree with Destiny. It's there, but it's the functioning of it in the bigger scheme of things is very much, in my opinion, at question. I think if you ask the majority of people across the state, they're like, what? I just think there is a huge disconnect. The other part about rural Indiana, I'm just reminding folks, I am the only candidate that is in rural Indiana and was when I ran. I am very aware of the opportunities and the challenges, and it's tough. It is tough. And I've lived in Marion County. I've lived in Delaware County, suburbia. Rural is very unique, and it encompasses so much of Indiana, but it is tough. I agree with Karen. We don't have all the answers, but we have a lot of smart people that can get to those answers.
Okay, so next we're going to go on to Kevin. Kevin, your question will be directed to Derek first, correct? And then we'll go on to Destiny, Karen, and Jennifer.
All right. Thanks, Vince. And thank you all for coming and joining us here tonight. We're really excited to have you all here. So my question is, it's pretty simple. I'll add a little bit more to it, but how do we win? You look at our landscape, 87 counties. It looks like we have a really hard chance of holding anything beyond a city council seat. At the state level, Republicans have a pretty solid 58% majority. Sorry, I'm doing double duty too. But they're turning that majority into 70-80% of the seats in the legislature with gerrymandering. So even if we claw back a majority, even if we get over 50% of voters, we may not actually have any power. So how do we win? How do we get there?
Well, thank you for that question. I think the first thing we need to keep in mind is it took us multiple cycles to get to this position that we are in now. And it's going to take us multiple cycles to get out of this position. With that, as we've all kind of been talking about, it is rebuilding at that local level. Not just having that one city council person, but expanding on that. It is important for our statewide candidates, for our congressional candidates, and our legislative candidates that they have someone in each community that the community trusts, that can vouch for those candidates and make sure that they are a part of that community. It's also important to remember that as Democrats, and I do feel like we forget this at times, we get distracted by that shiny thing at the top. That's not where the real power to influence your community can really happen. It's that city council, it's that mayor, it's that county commissioner, your sheriff, your prosecutor. Those are so important and have such a big impact on your day-to-day life that we need to start targeting those. Not only that, it gives us a bench of candidates to pull from for those higher offices. Candidates to run for Congress, for State House, for State Senate, for statewide, that have experience, that have a track record that people already know. And beyond that, those races give us a bench of staffers, of campaign staffers, people that know how to run campaigns, so that we're not always starting over at step one. The other thing is, as we look forward to this, it's important to remember that last year there were 385,000 Hoosier Democrats that did not vote in the election. Those votes would have flipped every single close House election we had in this state. So it's making sure that we are getting our county parties built up, that they can run their own get out the vote programs, so that our candidates can focus on talking to more voters, so that we are turning out those voters and then winning those close seats. As far as your question about the percentages, it's just straight up gerrymandering. We are stuck in that. Unfortunately, talking with some of these national groups and others that have talked to these national groups, like Eric Holder's group, there is not a lot legally we can do right now. They did not do racial gerrymanders. They did not do anything that the courts have expressed any interest in addressing. And so we are kind of stuck in that scenario.
Thank you. We'll move on to Destiny.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on a more technical note on the maps. The state party chose not to contest any of the maps in the last cycle with the census, and what they did instead was they really depended on nonprofits, C3, C4s to do their bidding. And we have to understand that we are playing against a Republican strategy that obfuscates totally the rule of law at this point. And so we have to be actually litigating. We have to be positioned so that when we are going into the next decade, that we are looking at those maps and we are ready to litigate them. There were states that did so successfully, but again, we chose not to. We weren't even putting out model maps. But I want to get back to the question, but just caveat there that we have to have a really strong litigation arm, and we have attorneys who are aging out and we are not replacing them. And so that is where the fight will be. In many instances, it will be about the rule of law. But to get back to the question on it, in how do we win, we need to develop, thank you, that strong local candidate pipeline. Like Derek was saying, you know, we like to get distracted by the shiny object at the state level, but we have to be winning locally. That means we have to be actively recruiting and training candidates at every level, and we need to be doing it with values-based messaging, right? Democrats, when we focus on economic opportunity, good jobs, strong schools, protecting democracy, and too often we are letting Republicans define us, and we have to stop that now. But again, to bring it full circle, like I said, the voter suppression and gerrymandering, Republicans have rigged the system. We know they have, and we have to invest more in our voter protection, legal challenges, and our grassroots mobilization.
I touched on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about the DNC and its role. But again, I agree with everything that Derek I agree with Derek. It's going to take multiple cycles, and we need to win local elections and build a bench. Absolutely. I disagree with Derek about the effect of litigation. I agree with my fellow attorney, Destiny, down over there, that we need to take this to the court. As an SCC member, I've been yelling about this for a number of years. Not only didn't we not challenge the maps in 2020, we didn't challenge them in 2010 either. I know what it's like. I spent my entire career in the Senate in the super minority, and it's all about gerrymandering. I have been doing research on that. The Brennan Center for Justice in Washington has tracked every single piece of litigation that's happened since those Supreme Court cases. There have been winners. And I'm not sure, Derek, that we don't have also a couple of racial gerrymandering lawsuits, bases. The second thing, we need to incentivize people to vote. People know they're supposed to vote. I was taking an Uber to the DNC meeting from the airport, and I talked to the cab driver, and he was all over, Trump. He didn't like Trump, etc. And I then he said to me, well, but I didn't vote this cycle. And my ears, perked up, and I said, all right, I want to know why. Tell me why you didn't vote. And he said, well, I'm not sure it makes a difference. I'm lazy, and I couldn't afford to take a half a day off of work. So we need to not only incentivize people, we need to make it easy for them. We need to show them you can vote by mail. You don't have to take off a day of work. And for that, we need to reach those people. And it's some of those things that I was talking about before with podcasts, with a separate education division, if you will, of the Democratic Party that just points to issues, teaches people about issues, and tells them why their vote matters. That's how we win.
So I really think it, in addition to all the issues with maps, and which I agree with all of that, I do agree with the legal side of it as well. But in addition to that, it really, for me, to win comes down to discipline. And it's easier said than done, but I know if you look at what ALEC does for the Republican Party, what Ziklag does, I've heard a ton of think tanks on that. If you look at what the Bush Foundation does, the Koch brothers, I mean, you go down the list, they are disciplined. But you can have discipline if the expectations are clear, you develop good leadership, you have training that people need, and you have resources. If we are a party that can't raise money for the state of Indiana, we're all in trouble. I just came off of a very difficult time. We raised $5.5 million. Was it enough to be competitive? Yes. Was it enough to win? No. But it's really hard to raise that money right now in Indiana because we haven't had wins. Mike Schmall, who's nationally connected, and this isn't a bashing of Mike Schmall, and it's not, but he will tell you it's really difficult to raise funds. It's hard to develop and to grow the gold circle. I mean, it's tough. I've talked to a lot of big donors, including unions, that are like, we have got to have the trust instilled back in and be brought to the table. We have got to have a voice, but that takes discipline from all of us. And instead of carving out people who don't hit the purity test, or carving out people because of their age, or carving out people because of whatever, that the day has got to be gone in discipline of inclusivity, in unification, and having bold ideas. But we have got to be disciplined, and that starts at the top. We cannot be wishy-washy and win in any state, especially in Indiana.
That's fair. Thank you all. Kevin, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I mean, this is personal. Obviously, I want to win for the future, right? It's sitting on my lap right now and running around back behind me wildly. But I think I think like litigation makes sense. There's a lot of like long-term things that we need to really focus on. But I think too, we need to be thinking about what are win conditions in the short term to get us there. And I'm kind of curious about, in the next election, what can we do to move the ball forward? In 2028, what can we do to move the ball forward? I don't know if we want to take just a little bit to talk about that. I would really appreciate hearing a little more.
Yeah, I can jump in if we want to go with the same order. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll be really quick. So in the party, we have a tendency to not do this, and we need to start counting our wins and our losses. To your question directly, if we look at some of those state house races from 24, if we look at, let's say, a Tiffany Stoner or a Thomas Horrocks, they've proven that we can perform in legislative districts, even if they are a so-called Trump district. And so we don't hold ourselves accountable on the losses, right? We like to frame our wins. We like to sell our wins. And so I think that is part of the immediacy in delivering results to not just Hoosiers, but having a bit of a culture change in the party as to how we are moving from one cycle to the next and making sure that we're accountable to the public.
Let me respond to that as well. So we don't have any elections going on in 25. We know what elections we've got in 26. So we've got a year to build and identify. We need to identify positions. And I'm not talking about, I mean, my heart was with the State House for a long time, but we have to start thinking about county positions, who's vulnerable, what positions are up, we need an inventory, and then we need a plan. So we need an inventory, and then, we pick those places and recruit candidates. And then if you get a vulnerable or an open position and a good candidate, you go for it. You spend the time and effort. But I never did believe, I used to argue with my county chair sometimes about this. When I first started, I never did believe in let's just fill up the ballot just to do it. I think we lose credibility that way. We pick our spots and we go after them hard. You cannot win every single election, at least not yet. So that's my thought. We need an inventory and then targeted battle.
We have a little time left. If Derek or Jennifer, if you have any comments.
Yeah, I will jump in. I'm sure, Derek, you want a little time too, so I will be brief. But for me, it goes back to the discipline, and I'll have to disagree with Senator Tallian. I think it is important we fill the ballots because we all benefit when those ballots are full. And we know we need to target resources. We understand that. But we all do better if someone has a reason to go out and vote. It really helps those statewide. And having done it twice, I know how important it is that those ballots are full. So we need to fill them, but we can't just fill them with someone breathing. They have to be really great candidates. And I feel like we're chasing candidates away that are good candidates. So we need to find them, be proactive, hang on to them, train them. That recruitment and retention is a huge problem. I will tell you right now, we are up against a party that is 10 steps ahead of us in candidate recruitment. And that is a problem. And again, it's about discipline, and we can't get anything done without a great strategic plan and then resources to support it.
So just an additional couple things to keep in mind is we do need to spend 2025 without the elections, building up our county parties, laying the groundwork for the candidates for next year, and spending that time recruiting candidates now too. Additionally, though, we do need to look at those local offices, those townships, those county offices that are on the ballot next year. And that is a little different depending on which county you're in too. Townships are up across the board. And kind of as Karen was saying, that we do need to be taking a look at which seats are going to be vulnerable. It's which ones do not have the incumbent running again. That makes it a little bit easier. Where have Republicans not filed to fill that ballot as well? And there are definitely opportunities that we are missing by not going after that and looking at those kind of races that we absolutely should be and can be. And that's where we gain ground here in Allen County. It may sound easy, but it is being strategic. It is looking at it and is playing a little bit of games, to be honest, and making those appointments happen at the last minute. But you guarantee wins too. And we have got some great elected officials in Trump's 70-30 areas now doing good work for their community and earning the respect and trust of their Republicans in those areas.
We'll move on to Craig's question. And Craig's question will start with Destiny, going in the order: Karen, Jennifer, Derek.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today and getting these questions. But my name is Craig Allison. I'm a 20-year member of Lyona, Local 274 in Lafayette, and we cover 13 counties. My question is, talking to the members, we've lost a lot of them to Trump and the Republicans over the years. And the main thing they talk about is they feel like they're not being represented by the party, that we've gotten off into social issues more than tabletop issues like job security, stuff like that. And in Indiana, there's about 75,000 union members. And when I talk to other reps in other trades, they're saying the same thing. So we're losing a big chunk of voter base to basically messaging. So my question is, what's the plan moving forward? We know we need to change the message. What's the plan moving forward to get those voters back?
Well, thanks for the question. So it's Destiny. I want to just gloss over the messaging piece because I believe it really comes to also how we are building out our infrastructure. So, we need to be leading with economic security. Obviously, populist economic messaging is what everybody kind of wants right now. Right? You have to be the party of higher wages, better jobs, lower costs. We have to show up and listen. We can't just be going to union halls in the last 3 or 4 months. And we have to run working class candidates who people see themselves in. They vote for people who understand their struggles. I know Jennifer said earlier that she was in rural Indiana, but I too grew up, with the alphabet soup around the table of union leaders and also farmers. So with that being said, I have a specific plan to bring labor back in. So we currently have 31, 33 voting members, 40 around not voting members total, state central committee, right? When I started to count these votes, I called labor. I called AFL. I called Labor Caucus. I called a couple other leaders, Liuna and stuff. And I said, look, when I look at this map, I only see 2 votes labor out of the whole dang thing. Yeah, we may have a women's caucus leader who's UAW, but her interests are with the women's caucus. We don't have labor's butts and seats at the table. Y'all feel like an ATM, but because you're not making the sausage, and I need you guys back at the table so that you are holding the very far left progressive side of the party who does not resonate with your membership, a lot of times over. We need you back there. And so what I want to see is that our district chairs and vice chairs, that they are not just the ones at the State Central Committee. I want to bring on treasurers and secretaries. We have the ability to loosen the rules. We don't need a convention. We don't have a constitution. We just have a rule book. And our state chair sets the rules committee. So the state chair can sit a rules committee that is open to innovation. And then I want to see labor leaders at that table. I want to see them running for secretary. I want to see them running for treasurer. I want them to bring the party back in and hold the party accountable. And I have shopped that around, and I think we're going to get there. It takes a little bit of trust because we cannot do it before reorg, but I promise you this, we will get started immediately on making sure that we revamp our rules and we revamp the table so that it is longer and more labor seated at it.
Thank you. We'll go on to Karen.
Thank you. I like this question because I feel like this is where I have been living for 16 years in the Senate. And I think, frankly, that I have more to offer on this particular area than anybody else here. My ties with labor are, like I said, long and strong. I was the ranking member on pensions and labor in the Senate. I did every bill that was pro-worker came through my office. I was on every labor committee. I was on the unemployment insurance during COVID. I was one of 4 people who had weekly meetings with the workforce development to make sure that we got payments out and that there was enough money left in the fund. I was the voice of labor in the Senate during Right to Work. I walked picket lines in Northwest Indiana and Fort Wayne, in Indianapolis. And I just want to tell you a story. During the Right to Work days, there were high tensions going on, and there were meetings and rallies at the State House. And there was one rally in particular when the state police were there, and they told Nancy Gaia, "Don't you turn on that microphone. Do not." All the galleries were filled, and they sent somebody up to my office, and they told me what was going on. I came down. The crowd parted because they all knew who I was. I walked over to the microphone. I looked over at the state police officer who was there threatening everybody because he knew that he could not arrest me during session. And I turned on the microphone and defused the situation, and everybody knew that. They knew they could trust me. I spoke for them there then, and I will continue to speak with labor. Labor leaders have been away from the table for a while, but I have had people tell me that we know you, we trust you. If you're in, we're back. And so I have a lot of ideas about how to bring labor to the table with additional people, maybe as finance chair. I've always been a friend to labor, and all the labor leaders know it.
Thank you. We'll move on to Jennifer.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have too many people who are running for this position that aren't going to be pushing for labor to come to the table. And I would also say it's not just about having you come to the table, it's about going to your members. And when I ran, it was so important to get to those meetings, get to leadership, get to individual members. I also know too, I still have union people who will pick up the phone and call me and say, do you happen to know somebody in this part of the state? Here's the issue we have going on and we need your help. And I will try my hardest to find someone to hook them up with that has a position of authority that can get something done for them. But it's about a partnership. We go to you, we rely on the unions, let's be honest, for that financial support, but it's so much bigger than that. We need your votes. We need your voice. We need your thoughts. I mean, it's just so much bigger than that. We cannot be successful without you. And I would say we shouldn't be. You know, it's about middle class. It's about making sure that our messaging is tight, that we are smart about what we are, how we're approaching it, but also like, what are we approaching? And I think that's the big question I've had from unions. I have 2 unions thus far. Many have said, hey, we're going to sit this out because we're going to hopefully work with whomever gets elected. But I have 2 that are have done formal endorsement letters that we will certainly put out. But I don't take that lightly. And I think it's because of the relationships I built with them. It's because even after the campaign, I'm still taking calls. I call them. You know, it's a partnership. And I think that's incredibly important.
So I think to your point, a lot of the labor leaders are already with us, but we are losing the membership. And we need to make sure that we are speaking to their issues. And that is something here with Northeast Indiana Building Trades we've been working on. We've been trying. It's sitting in there. It's making sure that our candidates and our electeds are constantly showing up and getting to know the union membership. But more importantly, it's when we work together, when we are collaboratively building out the message on what works, when we are collaboratively building out the strategy, we can win, both for labor and for the Democratic Party. And that's exactly what we've done the last 5 years here in Allen County, working hand in hand with the AFL-CIO and Mindy Rogers here in Fort Wayne. We have built a platform and a program here where we can turn out votes of Democrats, of labor, but it requires 3 different pillars. And I think we have to remember to do that. It is the party turning out voters, and it is working with organized labor, working on member-to-member programs. And it is with our candidates showing up for both of those as well. So it is this mutually supporting program that we are doing. I think the other thing to keep in mind, and this is something we've got to do a better job with our candidates about, is we have to localize our messaging. We have to understand that the national message doesn't work. And what works in different parts of the state is not going to work everywhere. Bloomington is not the same as Greencastle, not the same as Fort Wayne, not the same as the region. And so keeping that in mind as we're working with the stakeholders, building our message, organized labor, the caucuses, the voters themselves, and our electeds, we have to keep that in mind so that we can regionalize our message, make sure that we're speaking to the people about what they care about. Sometimes that might be better wages. Sometimes it might be something as simple as trash pickup. It really just kind of depends. And we have to keep that in mind and realize we have to have that discipline to stay on message and stay on topic, because we do have a moral obligation to win.
I just have to mention this because all of us will be impacted by this. There is no statewide current list that shows your web of organization. That is so, it's complex, but there is no current statewide list that candidates can have. And so you are left figuring it all out by yourself. And it is rough, whether it's at the local level, state level, but we need to shore that up like day one. Work with unions to get a statewide list and keep it current. That's the only way we can better partner.
Craig, I'll give the floor to you if you have any follow-up questions, and we'll give about 3 minutes for any responses.
No, I agree. And if any of you need information for all the locals, we have 11 locals throughout the state, and Lyuna itself is between 13 and 14,000 members right now. It is weird. Different trades are set up different. The operators, they have 3 different locals, and so on. So, but yeah, I think we need to, like you guys said, change messaging. The members, they love their guns. They go hunting. We're rural America, and I forget what movie it was where the Republicans and Democrats went into Wisconsin or something, and they both got beat up because it's just small rural town. Things are different here than it is on the east or west coast. So I'm happy to hear that everybody's seeing how bad we're getting beat and looking at alternative ways to overcome that.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate you being here.
This
Jonathan.
is Destiny. I just like to piggyback on what Jennifer's talking about, because I think it's a bigger issue in the party, and that is, and it's an issue with the DNC too, and it really percolated in this last DNC election, and that is, let me tell you first and foremost, I have learned the most from some of the consultants I have hired. Right, they are the most seasoned in the space. They give me the answers quickly, and they show me the ropes. On the other hand, we have an entire satellite economy that the Democratic Party has established. And that satellite economy gatekeeps for a monetary admission, right? And so when you're trying to get a hold of all of labor, you got about 3 or 4 consultants on one hand who you're going to call who all know labor. And we're all trying to reach the same people. We have to look at it from a more strategic level and being more transparent. Now, I'm sure labor doesn't want their phone ringing off the hook with an open, phone book of who everybody is. You got to work for your money a little, right? You got to go do the meetings, stand in front of the membership. But it's a balance, and that we are gatekeeping too much, both at the state level and, like I said, national level. We have to start reassessing those relationships and who is doing the best for the party, and then who is just in it for themselves. And it's going to be a little hairy, but it is completely necessary, and especially right at this time when it is a national conversation.
Thank you, Destiny. And we will move on to Jonathan's question. Jonathan, feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been such a wonderful conversation, and so appreciate all of you sharing. So my name is Jonathan Martin. I'm the director of the Center for Spiritual Life at DePaul University. And also, I'm the pastor of Fillmore United Methodist Church, a little church out here in the country. So I guess what's really on my mind, especially right now, it's certainly been frustrating for me as a local church pastor in Indiana to see just how effective, unfortunately, the right has been at commandeering faith conversations and faith values and faith communities and the work that they're doing, especially around culture wars and all that. So especially when I think about a congregation like mine that is a little more rural, where I feel like it's so ripe right now in terms of connecting over values. I would really just love for you to say a little bit about the role that we can play as faith communities, how you see us fitting in to how we win, because I think over and over again, the role of faith communities in this way continues to be pretty critical. But I think a lot of people are searching for on-ramps. I know I am as a pastor, in terms of how we can engage our congregations right now?
Thank you for the question. We'll start with Karen for this question.
It's an interesting question. And it's particularly interesting to me because I'm very much a proponent of the First Amendment. And the Republican Party has been beating everybody over the head with their version of religious nationalism. And that's got to be, I mean, I've got no other word for it. So there are some people who see any involvement about religion as kind of a backlash. Oh no, we don't want that. We don't want religion in the State House. And all you have to do is look at a couple of the people like our Lieutenant Governor. On the other hand, I'm really tired of the Republican Party commandeering religious ideas and religious thought, and they, that they speak, if you don't mind my saying so, they speak directly to God. We certainly had a governor who thought that, and he was, anyway, I won't go any farther about that. So I think it's to people like you, Jonathan, that you're a pastor at a small local community-based church. We have a small local community-based church in my town of Ogden Dunes. I think you need to talk to your community about how your religious ideas and what you do in terms of action, what you do in your community, does not necessarily reflect this crazy, like I said, religious nationalism that is so exclusive. And your small congregations need to get out in the community and say, look, all people of faith do not believe in that.
It's interesting. Through my experience, I have seen faith leaders not just be partners, but be leaders in a party and be very vocal in policy advocacy, policy development, messaging, how to message. It's a matter of making sure that we bring faith leaders of all faiths to the table to say, help us. What does that look like? What are your thoughts? Sarah, I have a friend who is in the middle of Wallace, Indiana, in a very, very tiny church. And sometimes he preaches, sometimes he doesn't, and they kind of rotate. But we have the most interesting conversations, and they have ideas. It's a matter of making sure that we have people at the table, that we're doing, a lot of listening, but the pivotal role in the policy advocacy cannot be ignored. That is where they are winning this all day long. That Christian nationalism didn't come out of nowhere. No one should be surprised by this. It's who's crafting, drafting, and molding policy. And it's time that Democrats embrace that and not be scared of it, and make sure that we're being, again, inclusive, and making sure that we're being, just very diverse in our thoughts. But, I don't have all the answers of what that looks like, but I'm certainly about bringing the right people to the table to come up with a solution. But it's about partnership and leadership.
Well, thank you for that question. I do think it is important for our faith communities to realize that they can be a part of this. As we talk about, all of us have been all night, about bringing the various stakeholders and constituency groups to the table to set our message, to do the work. Faith organizations and faith communities have a big part in that. We had one of our keynote speakers talked about why she is a Democrat, and it's because of her faith. Our faith communities have a big part of that why, and it's making sure that we are giving them the outlets to share that why, to share with their neighbors, to share with their communities, as volunteers, as candidates, whatever it may be, advocating for what they believe in, which will very likely happen to agree with a lot of what the Democratic Party believes in, if you look at the scripture itself. And that's not just Christianity, it's all of our faith communities, making sure they all have a place as well, whether it's Jewish, Muslim, or any of these others, and bringing them in as part of these stakeholder conversations, making sure that we're respecting their opinion and bringing them into those decisions on our message and everything else that we do as a party.
Jonathan, I hope my video is working. I wanted it to turn on so you could see my face. You asked my favorite question, and I loved how you framed the question on ramps. And that is what we need to be doing with the Indiana Democratic Party. We need to be creating more on-ramps. If you look at our state central committee, as compared relatively to all the other committees in the United States, we are one of the smallest. In fact, at one time, we were the smallest. Because back in the day, they used to put Indiana Democrats on planes and fly them around to tell their Democratic parties how to do it, right? We had everybody in office. It was the heyday. I'm sure like people like Derek and I hear about it all the time, and we're like, we don't know. We were in high school or middle school. But we made sure that we centralized power, and we made this committee so small because it worked for us then, but it does not work for us now. And so when I talk about lengthening the table and expanding the district model so that we have more seats, we go from 18 votes to 36. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the other side of the scale in those constituency caucuses. When I say birds of a feather, get things done together. And one of my girlfriends from Hoosier down the road, she has a really great way of saying it. She says, "Do you think those mega churches got so big because everybody just loves Jesus?" She was like, they love Jesus, but they like their affinity groups and Jesus, right? They like surfing and Jesus, they like knitting and Jesus. And so they build out these affinity groups for a common cause. We need to be doing as Democrats. We need to have an interfaith council. We already have these things at the DNC level. Other states have them, but we keep telling faith leaders, no, we don't have any room for you at the table, because then we'd have to share this concept of power we have, even if we don't have the power. I mentioned earlier in the call, I sat with one of our leading Black pastors in Indy, and he said he's been told no twice already about bringing on interfaith council. I already have the entire plan set. We will be bringing on more constituency-based councils, and that includes interfaith, because that is the one thing that we know blankets Indiana from top down, and it fits all different types of people, is that we could have this interfaith council where we are representing a broad constituency of Democratic voices. That is what we need at the table. Again, I'm not asking you to bring a chair up and squeeze in. I'm going to lengthen the table so that you have a seat.
Thank you, Destiny. Jonathan, I'll give you the floor if you have any follow-up questions or any comments you want to make.
Oh, I just really appreciate all the responses, and I'm glad for one that we're naming the reality of Christian nationalism, because it's so much of what we're contending with. I know here at DePaul Spiritual Life, we hosted a forum on Christian nationalism a few months ago that was really important. But I think, yeah, just that I love just even that last reflection in terms of on the on-ramps, because I do feel like, well, the other strikes me as idolatrous and like a whole lot of other words I could use. There are a lot of on-ramps for faith communities for conversation. So I'm just glad that we're thinking that way, because I definitely think that there are a lot of rural congregations in places like Fillmore who are ready to engage their faith in action and don't want those alternative narratives to speak for them. And so, yeah, I'm just very heartened by everything that I heard. Thank y'all so much for your responses.
Thank you for being here. So for the sake of time, I'm going to not ask the question that I had sent you that was my question, but feel free if you want to answer it. We can have conversations offline at some time. But I would like to give you all about a minute just to end a closing statement, if you will. We'll go reverse order of our introductions. So we'll start with Karen. And Karen, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm going to kind of try to end the conversation by answering the question that I think you originally put. What did we do well, and what do we need to do in the future? Mike Schmuel and his team got a lot of things put back in order. There were some problems, prior mistakes. Things were fixed. He put together a good staff. He expanded the financial contribution base, showed how we can work with the DNC to bring in dollars and technology. But we're going to have a next chair, and there are the next steps. It is going to be a hard job, especially given what's happening in the White House right now. But it's also an opportunity. The T&E team is going to screw up. They already started to screw up. Meanwhile, we need to shore up our foundations and be ready. We need to do outreach. We need to be the party of telling the truth, and we need to be the place where people go to find out the real story. We also need to get our own house in order. Indiana Democratic Party spending $9,000 a month on rent plus parking. We need to, our lease is up in 2026. Somebody's going to have to get us out of there, get us out from under that burden, and find a new place to live. We need to start making life uncomfortable for the Republicans, some of whom are already afraid of their party. And we need to have 92 strategies for every county, because we have a diverse state and they have diverse needs. So as your next chair, I hope to bring labor back to the table. I hope to revise some of our internal foundation, and I hope to get ready for 2026.
Thank you, Karen. Jennifer, we'll give you the floor with a minute to go ahead and close us out.
Yeah, I just once again want to thank you and thank Putnam County overall for this opportunity. Well done. Well done. What a great example for other counties. So, and everybody who gave their time tonight, thank you. I also want to thank the fellow candidates that are here. I mean, everybody has given to the state, and Destiny's given to the United States, but we've all given in our own way. And I so appreciate all of you, and I appreciate all of us doing this. So for me, it comes down to really it's this election is critical on so many different levels, but that discipline that I've talked about is going to have to revolve around proven leadership. And someone, like I said, I won statewide. I know what that means. I was responsible for over half of the state budget, $9 billion, creating a strategic plan that could be implemented statewide. All of us are going to have ideas on, we're going to bring the unions to the table. We're going to bring faith leaders to the table. We know we have to have a bigger collective voice. That is not unique to any of us. We also know too, that we must bring inclusivity and diverse, and we cannot just shun those who have done this for years and years and years at the expense of new ideas. We need everybody. And so for me, it's about the discipline. It's about planning. It's about no one can lead if you don't have followers. And it also is very much about who can raise the money. I mean, I hate that we're down to that, but on so many levels, you can have the best strategic plan in the world, the biggest state central committee table in the world. If we don't raise the money we need, we're going to be right back in the same situation. And then being smart with how do you manage those resources? It's not just about revenue. It's about managing the resources. So once again, thank you, everybody. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll move on to Derek.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you for this. Each of these candidates, each of us is bringing a different quality to this race, a different experience. And I do feel with that, we all have those different experiences. My background is I've been a party leader. I've built a party organization. I've rebuilt Allen County Democratic Party. And I was the one that rebuilt the Indiana Young Democrats in building out the organizations, the memberships, and making sure that we are bringing in the money. We've increased fundraising at every opportunity that we've had in those organizations. And that's what we'll do here at the state party. It's going to start with bringing on an advisory committee of proven fundraisers, former chairs, former candidates that have that record of bringing in hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to all support the party's efforts. It's going to be putting in place a county party program that is there to support our local parties and helping them improve their infrastructure so that they can get local Democrats elected to office, giving us that bench to move forward. And it's going to be making sure we're bringing all of our stakeholders together so that we're getting a message that works for Indiana, works for our communities, and that we're staying disciplined on. So thank you again for the Putnam County Democrats for putting this great forum on tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And Destiny, we'll move on to you.
Yeah, it's great. This is the first forum that we've all had together. I do want to say one thing. It is the state party's chair to raise money. It is not going to be people coming to save you. And I think that some of us have been in the hot seat and we have had to raise 7 figures very quickly and earn $1. You should not be applying for this job if you don't believe you can do it all on your own. With that being said, I am the reform candidate. When we finished elections in November, I heard a lot of people say we should just take a baseball bat to it. But what I've heard lately is a lot of people getting comfortable in being the minority in the state house, getting comfortable in knowing that they lead their city, but that we don't lead the state. I think I have proven tonight that I have been thinking this from a deep structural perspective, and that we have to reform how we are doing business before we can actually win. So we are going to recruit. We're going to find the people that we want to go to war with, right? That's how I was taught. We're going to do the reform piece. We are going to seat a committee and a rules committee that are open to innovation. And then we are going to do the fun piece. We're going to rebrand, and we're going to start to communicate like we heard earlier on those labor questions, so that we're talking to the working class again. Thank you for having me. I'm quite happy to be here, and I am ready to lead on March 15th.
I want to thank you all again on behalf of the Putnam County Democrats and everyone in Putnam County for taking the time for giving us your evening while maintaining family obligations and other obligations. And I'm sure you're all running around the state because you care. And I'm glad that you all care. Thank you for those of our audience who asked questions. Thank you for spending time with us. And looking forward to seeing each and every one of you in Putnam County at some point in the coming years, regardless of the capacity. But I hope you all have a great night. And just know that we here in Putnam County are always here for anything you need, and to give me a call if you're coming this way.